Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Haunted House. My name is Ghost, and welcome back to another episode of History with a Ghost. The Jim Crow era was a painful time for African Americans. Even after the Civil War, Southern states oppressed people of color. It was a time where Southern states passed laws that enforced racial segregation and where white supremacy was rampant. Today, we are talking about one of the victims of that time. Today, we're talking about Emmett Till, a 15-year-old kid who was brutally murdered. When I tell you what happened to him and why, you'll probably agree with me that this is the most outlandish overreaction to ever happen. Emmett was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. His childhood was kind of rough. His parents separated in 1942, and not long after that, his father, Louis Till, would assault his mother, Mammy Till, choking her to near death. She would respond by throwing hot water at him. He was taken to court where he had to choose between military service or jail time. He would serve for a while before being court-martialed for the murder of a Italian woman and the rape of two others. He would be executed by hanging not long after. Emmett was described as a loving, outgoing, funny boy who was also very protective. Emmett planned to go to rural Mississippi and spend the summer with his uncle Moses Wright and other relatives. Emmett's mum knew that he was a bit of a jokester. She warned him that whites in the South could react badly to his behavior compared to the North. Despite her warnings, he still went. While there, one day, Emmett decided to go shopping with relatives for candy. The store they would go to was Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, owned by Ray Bryant. While in the shop, Emmett would run into a woman by the name of Caroline Bryant, the wife of Roy Bryant. Everything going forward is disputed. It's he say, she say. It's not known what really happened. Um, it is said that Emmett dog whistled at Caroline. Uh, Other people say Emmett inappropriately touched her multiple times and catcalled her. After Emmett and his friends left the store, Caroline went to Roy straight away and told him. Roy was furious, you could say, maybe just a little bit too furious. The next day, Roy proceeded to grab his half brother John Millen, go to Moses Wright's home where Emmett was staying, armed with a pistol. Roy and his brother banged on the door and demanded they see Emmett. Emmett's aunt offered money to the two, but they refused. Roy's brother asked Mr. Wright how old he was, and he responded 64. He then proceeded to say if he tells anyone about this event, he won't make it to 65. Just an absolute a-hole, this dude. They proceeded to rush Emmett out of bed and rushed him to put his clothes on before putting him into their truck. They tied him up and drove off. While driving to a barn, Emmett was pistol whipped and knocked out. They made it to the barn where unspeakable things would happen. Emmett was beaten to death. People could reportedly hear crying and yelling as they passed the barn. One man, Willie Reed, heard it and went to tell a neighbor. They both snuck up on the barn where they were spotted by John Millen. John asked if they heard anything and they responded no, quickly leaving. Another local neighbor, a couple hours later, saw a man by the name of Leroy Collins washing blood off the truck and he would say to the neighbor that he'd killed a deer. The person also noticed Emmett's boot next to the truck. Leroy was forced to help in Emmett's lynching and murder. After torturing Emmett for at least a couple hours, Roy and John took Emmett's body to the Tallahatchie River, a famous river in Mississippi. There, they shot Emmett in the head behind the ear, tied a fan to his neck as a weight so he would sink using barbed wire, and threw him into the river. Emmett's uncle was worried all night. He didn't sleep. He drove around with a friend for a while trying to find Emmett, but were unsuccessful. Not long after, Emmett's mother was notified, where she called the sheriff. We're going to talk more about the sheriff later. Roy and John were soon found and questioned by the police. They admitted that they took Emmett, but said they dropped him off at the grocery store where this all started. They were both arrested for kidnapping. 3 days later, Emmett's body was found by two kids fishing at the river. John and Roy mutilated this kid. He was not recognizable. The only thing that identified him was a ring that he had that had his initials and his date of birth. He looked horrible. I can't show you the photos here, but if you have a strong stomach, you can look them up. Emmett's mum was obviously devastated. Any mother would be. But she made a decision that would make Emmett's death the catalyst for the civil rights movement. She wanted a open casket for his funeral. She wanted to show the world the evil that roamed that country. And it worked. Newspapers everywhere were picking up what happened to Emmett. It was all over the news. Emmett was laid to rest on the 6th of September 1955. Not long after, on the 19th, the trial of Roy and John would start. And I gotta say, it was an absolute joke. I've never seen a trial more rigged than this. The jury were all white, which most people in the South at the time were racist. This jury didn't give a crap about anything. They were more concerned about getting food than the deliberation. I'm not joking, you can look that up. The guy I mentioned earlier, Leroy Collins, showed up at the courthouse and was going to testify against Roy and John and supposedly tell them how he was forced to help them. The sheriff I mentioned earlier, Sheriff Strider, would catch Leroy not long before the trial and put him in jail to stop him from testifying. This Sheriff Strider also didn't. This Sheriff Strider also did some other stupid and horrible stuff like saying the body they found wasn't Emmett's, even though there was a ring identifying him, saying it was a man's body and not a child's. He also testified in defense of John and Roy. He was a real a-hole. On top of the obvious corruption from the sheriff, the defense also tried to say that the body wasn't Till. They also guilt tripped the jury using racist talking points. Moses Wright testified as well in the hearing, despite threats from John, pointing Roy and John out specifically. After the trial, Moses fled to Chicago and never went back to Mississippi. In the end, both Roy and John were acquitted in the trial and lived the rest of their life free from consequences. A couple months after the trial, they would admit to killing Emmett in a magazine interview. The woman that started this whole thing, Caroline Bryant, would also admit in her later years that parts of her story were made up. She would also live freely without consequence until 2023 when she died. Emmett's mum, Mammy, would spend the rest of her life fighting the civil rights movement till she died. Emmett, for people curious, is buried at the Burr Oak Cemetery in Alsip, Illinois. Um, yeah, and that's really about everything about Emmett. Um, there was another investigation a couple years ago by the FBI, but that turned up nothing. Yeah, it's just a crappy story, dude. It sucks. It's just horrible. It just shows just how horrible 1950s, 40s America was. It was horrible, dude. But yeah. If you like this video, please give it a like and a follow. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.